Okay. I'm going to be arguing on the hot topic of the death penalty. My topic is that the death penalty is overall an effective means of deterring or at least stopping or reverting innocent deaths or murders. The fact that death awaits criminals or murderers could in itself be an effective deterrent, but the very fact that taking a murderer or serial criminal off the streets could in itself deter murders because, well, a murderer can't commit murders if he's not on the streets or alive anymore. To support this, from what I've seen, lives can very well be saved by the conviction and execution of a convicted murderer. And in the long run, although not initially, the prices of the execution are actually overall cheaper than a full sentence of life. And the third point is that executions of innocent people are rare. The first point, the first point I got says a study done found that 3 to 18 lives, or innocent lives, can be saved after every conviction of one murderer. So 3 to 18 lives, 3 to 18 murders can be averted because one person was sentenced to death on average. And Nassim Mokan, an actual opponent of the death penalty, found through his individual studies that he himself conducted, found that on average 5 lives could be saved with every successful conviction execution of a convicted murderer. And on my second point, that in the long run, it's cheaper to execute people for their crimes instead of keeping them in jail. It has been said that it's cheaper to keep them in prison instead of execute them. And up front, that is true. That the cost of the case is actually much cheaper for a life imprisonment case than an execution case, because with an execution case, they don't want to actually execute an innocent person. But in the long run, if you keep track of how much money is spent on the criminal in life imprisonment, it will more than catch up to it will more than surpass, catch up to, and be more expensive than the price of the person if they were just executed, because of things such as meals, the housing. It might not be that good. You're in a small block, but it still costs money to keep that up. And eventually it will surpass the price of the trial for the execution case. And in the long run, life without parole has been found to cost $1.2 to $3.6 million more in the long run after the life sentence has been carried out than an execution case. And my third point is that innocent executions are very rare, because, as I stated, there is a lot more money initially spent for an execution case. Very few innocent people are ever sentenced to death. And the other point is that usually people who are sentenced to death spend a very long time in death row before they're actually executed. And in this time, they're still doing research and trying to prove this man or woman innocent of the crime. And during that long stay in death row, they could well be proven innocent and taken out of death row before they're actually executed. So, in general, I think that it is cheaper, more effective deterrent, and overall, not very many, if any, innocent people will get killed in death row. So I find it's more effective to actually go through with an execution than to keep someone in prison for life.
All right, you've got a statement of the proposition, but the phrasing is a little bit awkward. It's sort of like you've got two dependent clauses built into it, so you need to simplify it. At first I didn't think there was a preview in the speech, but then as I'm listening to it, I realized you were kind of in the middle of it, and once I got there, I could follow the second and the third points that were going on. So that was a little bit awkward, but there is a preview to the structure. The signposting was clearer, and again, it was clearer on the second and the third points than it was on the first point. The third point, I think, is really more of a rebuttal issue. It doesn't really address the main proposition about the effectiveness of it as a crime deterrent. It's like the defense against an argument that is frequently made against the death penalty. There could be some relevance there, but I think the argument would have to be expanded a little bit more to make it relevant. The information on the first point, you've got two general pieces of information. The first one, there's a reference to a study, but there's no source presented. The second reference to a study comes from what was supposedly a piece of reluctant testimony, and so that from that point of view it sounds convincing, but again there's not much explanation about how the research reached that conclusion, and so the confidence level in the statistical information I think is a little bit problematic. After that, we don't really get much data on the cost issue. You largely come up with an explanation about what the costs are going to be, but there's no data on it until right at the end when you say there's a 1.2 million to 3.4 million cost over the lifetime of life imprisonment, but I have no idea where that figure came from, so there's no source citation on that particular point. I think the generalizations are a little underdeveloped, especially the first and the second points. There's a very clear summary at the end. You have good audience contact. Your voice fluctuates a little bit, so it needs to be a little bit more fluent. And you had a little more time, so I think you could have developed those first 2 points a lot more. All right, thank you.